Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. And together we bring you experts and ideas to help you grow happy, healthy, successful families that are both inside.
And outside the box. If you like the show, be sure to follow Christina on Facebook.
And please leave us a like, review, and comment on your favorite podcast platform. Hello, I have the pleasure of introducing Karen Hall. She is an international inspirational motivational speaker on the Empathy Advantage and managing director of the Los Angeles Tribune Women's and Spanish Journal. Trained by Marianne Williamson as a spiritual life coach, she hosts the Hero Within podcast, featuring inspiring stories of unsung heroes who use emotional intelligence to overcome adversity, find hope, build trust, and return to love. Married for 39 years to Joshua, they have 4 married children and 5 grandchildren. Karen, welcome to the show. We have a lot in common. I also have been married for over 30 years to my wonderful husband, Herb, who's usually with me, but this is a special event, so he wasn't able to be here. But I am so glad you're here. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. It's great to be with you.
So, Empathy Queen, the Queen of Empathy, that is what your little title says underneath your name and part of your introduction, your bio. What is it about empathy? What brought you to this realm, this space?
Yes. So, empathy is such an important skill for me. As I have been going through my life, I started out with adversity from birth, and I dealt with a lot of obstacles in my life that I needed to overcome. And so, as I was learning to manage my emotions, one of the things that I realized was I'm a very highly sensitive person. I'm an HSP. I'm also an empath. And so I take on the feelings of others sometimes when I shouldn't. And I feel things very deeply. Feel things so intently. Do you experience that too?
Absolutely. And my husband is the same way, very high empath.
Yes, yes. And so a lot of times when my emotions would get escalated, I would be so focused on my own painful, emotions that I couldn't access empathy for the other person.
Mhm.
And that was so odd for me because in other situations, I had all the empathy in the world for the
Right.
person that was hurting. But if I was escalated, I was more focused on myself. And I also didn't have very much empathy for myself. In those moments, I would forget to be nice to myself.
Mhm.
I could easily have compassion for someone else that was hurting, but I would forget to have compassion for myself. And so as I recognized these things and as I was raising my children, I was teaching them the skills, but then I was realizing I need to apply the same thing to myself. And so people would always tell me how empathetic I was,
Mhm.
but it was really interesting because my children were the ones that helped me to recognize that I needed to practice the empathy for myself as well.
Wow, yeah, and I so relate to that. I mean, oh my gosh, this was just a perfect match made because, like I said, my husband is highly empathetic. I, being a teacher for 27 years, is very empathetic as well, working with the kids and just realizing that the emotions of the kids in my classroom lots of times impacted me, and so I had really had to work on that. But then, like you said, empathetic for other people, really caring about other people, but when it comes to me, it's like, "Oh, no, I should be able to do this easier. I should be doing," and I don't have the same caring for me. So what I love about this is not only the coincidence of us being together, but that you said that you like to talk to parents and hopefully how help these parents understand these super empathetic kids and maybe give them some hints on how in the world do we make this easier for all of us so we aren't beating ourselves up all the time.
Absolutely. And one of the things that as a parent, I was trying to be the example to my children. I was
Mhm.
trying to help them to learn because as I struggled through my life to learn how to manage my emotions, I wanted to help them to learn how to manage their emotions. And so emotional intelligence is really important to me. And so when I'm teaching, um, I do coaching with parents and with children. And a lot of times the parents will bring the child and they'll say, my child's dealing with anxiety and I don't know how to help them. And can you coach them? And I end up coaching the parents as well because they're affected when their child's emotions are escalated
Yep.
and they have oftentimes have a very challenging situation on their hands because they want the child to feel better. Their inclination is, what can I say? What can I do? How can I fix this problem? And they become dysregulated and they don't realize that first they have to regulate their own emotions and show empathy to themselves. And it's kind of like, take the oxygen mask on yourself before you give it to the child. And
Absolutely.
and then they are able to help that child through their empathy for themselves to have empathy for the child, and then they help the child learn to deal with their own emotions as well. So it's a really interesting process, because so many times we just want to jump over the part of having empathy for ourselves. We're like,
Mhm.
let's go over there and let's help them and sacrifice, our own feelings at the moment, kind of push those aside. I think many times with our gift of being an empath and being highly sensitive, we are so in tune with other people that that's natural for us. That's easy for us.
Yeah.
But it does take work to, and also it's like, getting your car in for a tune-up. We can't just keep driving and never get the tune-up and never change the oil. We do have to do the self-care as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've talked about with parents as well is, whenever you're trying to help your child, don't jump in and try to solve the problem first.
Yeah.
Give them space to listen and listen to the actual problem and let the kids kind of process as you process and, like you said, calm first and then move into either helping or giving suggestions or whatever the child might need.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So whenever you're working with a parent, because we want to focus on parents first this time, and we'll get to the kids in a few minutes. But what is maybe one tool or one thing you really specifically say to the parents about how do you get started on this process of making sure they're regulated before they jump in and try to help their kiddos?
Well, one of the first things is I help parents learn to recognize what's going on inside their body, because
Mhm.
our body usually has the first reaction. Maybe our stomach gets tense, or our shoulders get tense, or maybe we notice we're furrowing our brow, or our heart starts pounding or something. And so we usually start to notice something within our body. And as we become aware, self-aware of something that's going on in within us, then that helps us to be able to take care of ourselves. So first we have to be aware. And that's one of the tricky parts, because a lot of times we have ignored those signs as they are, very subtle in the beginning. And as we become more aware, then we are able to acknowledge those things. And you've probably heard the phrase, name it to tame it.
Mhm.
And so Dr. Dan Siegel realized as a neuroscientist that if we could just name what that feeling was, that would help us to regulate our emotions.
Yeah.
And I remember, I didn't know that term, but I remember when I had my first child, and she was very strong-willed, and she just had very strong opinions about things, but she wasn't able to talk yet. She wasn't able to describe what her feelings were, but she would verbalize by screaming.
Mhm.
If she didn't like something. And so I was trying to help her learn how to manage her emotions, because I had been working on that my whole life.
Right.
And I would ask her, do you feel this way? And at first, I could tell that we had a disconnect. And the thought came to me to draw a picture of little faces. And so I had like a face with a smile, and I had a face with,
Mhm.
eyebrows that were furrowed,
Yeah.
and I had the surprise face. And I would have her look at this list of little faces,
Mhm.
and I would say, which face do you feel?
Right.
And she would point to the face that she felt. And then I would identify the feeling for her, and I say, oh, you feel scared.
Yeah.
And she would nod. And and so then it was amazing, because immediately
Calm.
she would relax,
Yeah.
and she would be able to, instead of just having this very strong reaction, she would be able to come to a more calm space. And then I could hold her, and she would have strong tantrums. But when we would be able to identify what that
Mhm.
feeling was,
Yeah.
and when she felt that I really cared about her, I wasn't trying to fix it, I was just trying to understand where
Yeah.
she was coming from. Then she would just melt into my arms, and we felt greater trust between us, and then we were able to move forward.
Absolutely love that. One of the questions that pops into my head with that, though, is that we need to help our kids understand those emotions and maybe name those emotions. But when do parents maybe go too far and kind of put that emotion on their child? I mean, because that's one thing that I've kind of noticed, like, oh, young kids will come in with these big words. Oh, I have anxiety, I have depression. It's like, wait a second. Yes, kids can have those, but is that really theirs, or did the parent kind of put them on it? Can you help us with that a little bit?
Yes, I've seen that too. And when the child just feels a little discomfort, oh, I'm having anxiety. I have to go out to the anxiety room to take care of that, and that can be very challenging because
Mhm.
sometimes as parents, we unintentionally do that. And so maybe we see a little subtle, just a normal kind of a worry. Oh no, they have anxiety because I have anxiety. They must have it too, or something.
Exactly.
Sometimes we
Yeah.
can misinterpret things and give those labels. And so I think you're right. I think we have to be careful about identifying, the feelings. Sometimes I will use a general term like, oh, I sense that you're feeling uncomfortable. And so
Yeah.
that way it's not like a label like, oh, I have this issue,
Yeah.
because we all have uncomfortable feelings at one time or another. And just recognizing that it's uncomfortable is the start to the next step. Okay, well, how do you feel uncomfortable? And when a child is able to talk, when my daughter got older, she was, very able to express her feelings. And all my children were able to do that. And I remember my mother-in-law said to me, do you always talk about feelings? Is that all you ever talk about? I was like, kind of, because that's just how I operate. And when I
Right.
understand how I feel and I understand how you feel,
Mhm.
then with that understanding, we can accomplish so much, and we can accomplish so much individually and together as an
Mhm.
as a team, as a family.
I absolutely love that. And I love going back to what you said, name it to tame it, right? It's like you don't have to like totally live in it, but let's name it so we can kind of figure out what's happening and how we can fix it. Now, one of the things I used to do in my classroom and I do when I work with kids is I would actually have them practice some of those spaces or practice what their body felt like whenever they would have those kinds of emotions so they could start learning what the difference was, but not necessarily name, oh, you're having that feeling, right?
Right.
What do you think about that idea?
Now, a few words about vibrant family education.
How many entrepreneurs and business owners start out on this journey to make a better life for their family, only to find that it took so much more time and effort than they were expecting that they had even less time for their family? I know I did.
At Vibrant Family Education, we want to help you reach your family goals while you're still building towards your business goals. We do this by bringing you the third leg of the stool to keep your family upright, family education development.
By bringing your children's education home, you will be able to model your work ethic and family values as you overcome obstacles and challenges to build your business. Instead of learning facts to pass tests, your children can be watching and seeing the dedication it takes to build your business and the legacy you want to create for their future. They will be able to witness the struggles and joys, the wins and the losses, and learn from you how to persevere and grow in life.
Instead of waiting until you get successful to spend more time with your family, start with the end goal in mind and bring your family home. Instead of trying to repair your family after you reach success, let us help you start achieving your family goals from the outset. Learn to be successful with your family now, and no matter what happens in the future, they will be better prepared for life, especially after watching how you cared for and built not only a business, but a healthy, happy, and successful family.
We offer a wide range of educational services, including how to easily get started with homeschooling. Come visit us at vibrantfamilyeducation.com and let us show you how. And now, back to our guest.
Oh, I think it's excellent. I do that with the children when I coach them too. And I'll make the face and I'll say, guess what feeling that I'm having?
Huh.
And then we talk about how you become aware. And that's part of emotional intelligence, is to
Mhm.
become aware of what is going on with that other person, even when they aren't able to identify it yet. Maybe my emotions are so escalated, I can't even talk at the moment. Maybe I don't even know yet what my
Mhm.
emotion is. But when someone has emotional intelligence, they sense that I have some uncomfortable feeling of some sort.
Right.
And they are able to reach out to me. And so it's a powerful skill, and it's a fun skill for children to recognize that we communicate without
Yeah.
speaking, and that I'm communicating to you that I'm in some kind of distress, and you're picking up on that. Even if you don't say anything, you could still, just be by me. You could offer a compassionate look on your face. And so we talk a lot about how we can help each other manage our emotions even when we don't talk. But one of the things that's really interesting as parents is many of the parents that I speak to feel like they shouldn't tell their child that they have felt these feelings. Like maybe the child, is feeling fear. And the parent thinks, well, I don't want to tell the child that I have fear. That's going to lower my, authority with that child, or that's going to lower my credibility, or,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be as, seen in such a highlight, in my child's eyes. But
Exactly.
what's so interesting as we do that, like one of the things that I did with my children at bedtime, when they were very little, I would, cuddle with them, and I always nursed my kids and would rock in the rocking chair and, talk with them. And then as they got a little bit older, I would talk to them about their day. What was the best part of your day today? And then I would say, and what was something that was hard about your day to day? And we would talk about their feelings.
Right.
And I would go from child to child, from bed to bed, and doing this process. And as I did that, I would help the child recognize and normalize that feeling. Oh, you felt afraid? I felt afraid too. And then I would tell them a story about a time when I was, younger, their age, or and I even would tell them, even now as an adult, I still feel afraid sometimes, so that they knew they weren't alone. And then what was so interesting about that was that increased the child's trust in me, that they knew that because I knew what it felt like to be afraid, that they could share that with me again.
That is awesome, because one of the things that I've also learned with kiddos is that if well, you said highly empathetic, right? Highly sensitive. They have what I like to call a spidey sense. They know there's something going on, even if you don't tell them, right?
Yes.
And so then you leave them with wonder. It's like, well, I wonder why mom or dad's feeling like that. Well, why are they upset? Why are they yelling? Did I do something wrong? So one of the things I like to tell parents is, please talk to your child about your emotions at age appropriate level, of course. But that way they don't put stories in their own head of, oh, well, I did something wrong. That's why mom and dad are upset. Or, oh, I'm the one who's disappointed mom and dad. I've made them sad, kind of thing. So I think part of that highly emotional, highly sensitive thing is talking about is actually more of a help than a hindrance, just like you were saying.
You are so spot on. And thank you for teaching, your parents that, because that can be very scary as a parent. So many of the parents that I coach are afraid to do that. They're afraid to tell their child because they hear things like, well, you shouldn't burden your child, with your adult problems.
Yes.
And that is true. But just like you said, we can still do things that are age appropriate. We can say, mom and dad are disagree on things. Do you ever have a disagreement? Does your friend want to play a game differently than you want to play the game? And you can just explain things in very basic terms and say, but and then you can say, but we're going to figure it out, or whatever, to reassure the child. But that helps the child so much, because our natural inclination is always to say, what did I do? And then if that is ingrained in us and we aren't taught that it isn't our fault, and even if we are taught that, our brain defaults to that as an adult when something goes wrong and we can't figure it out. We eventually say, did I do something to cause this? And so I think that that's very important, because that helps that child to learn better coping skills when emotions are escalating in other people around them.
And one of the things I say is, what better role model can you be if you're explaining and talking about your feelings, if you're showing them how to handle it? You blow up, you're a horrible parent at the moment. And when you come back and explain, I'm sorry, there was this thing going on, it wasn't you, and this is how you apologize, and this is how you make up. I'm sorry, that's a great role model, instead of burdening your child or showing that you're weak,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for bringing that up, because being able to say that we're sorry to a child, I remember doing that when my children were very little, and people around me just thought that was so wrong. And they would say, you should never say that. And I'm like, are you kidding? How else is my child going to learn to apologize themselves if I don't set that example? And I want them to know that I am sorry. I am sorry that, I was stressed and I had an outburst that was inappropriate. Maybe I yelled or whatever it was, and it
Right.
wasn't the child's fault. That's so important, to take ownership, because then they learn to take ownership. And then we can both, apologize and reconnect and reestablish that trust in that relationship. If we just sweep it under the carpet, that's when those emotions can, escalate and fester, and then we can have that disconnect, and it can get wider and wider between us. And so I think that you're doing a fantastic job teaching those things to your parents.
Well, thank you. Yeah. One of the other things I like to kind of throw in here is like financial stress. Parents especially don't want to tell their kids, oh, well, we can't go do that because we don't have enough money right now, or we can't do this because, it's just not in the budget, kind of thing. But if we're trying to raise these emotionally intelligent kids, and they know it anyway because of that spidey sense going off, let's talk about budgets. Hey, in a normal family, sometimes the money is tight. Sometimes we have lots of money. This month we can't do that, but maybe next month, whenever dad gets his bonus or whatever, we can. So I just really want to encourage parents as well, as part of this emotional intelligence, is to bring all kind of aspects, financial, emotional, etc., as well into the discussions.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's such a great idea. And with, inflation being so high right now,
Mhm.
finances are a big, factor, and even
Yeah.
going on vacation. And
Yeah.
so involving the kids, I remember one time my dad lost his job, and my mom sat us down and said, you know what? Dad doesn't have any income coming in. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so she said, we're gonna have to go shop at the Goodwill,
Mhm.
and the thrift stores.
Yeah.
And it was like, let's see how much we can get for this much money. And I'll tell you what, my mom really made it a game. It was a
Yeah.
challenge, and it became such a fun thing. We learned budgeting skills as far as like when we went to the grocery store, what's on sale. We learned all kinds of amazing life skills from that because my parents were willing to share with us what was going on. And that taught me how important that was, because then I felt like I was a part of a team that was working together. It wasn't like, oh, that's their problem and now I'm stressed because what did I do? It's like we're all in this together,
Mhm.
and that bonded our family together.
I absolutely love that. Yes. And, yeah, that's what we want. So tell us a little bit more about what you do specifically with kids, because you said you work with parents and children, right?
Right, right. So yeah, so in my coaching practice, I teach emotional intelligence to children, and I
Uh-huh.
teach them how to deal with those emotions, how to regulate their nervous system, and then I teach the parents the same thing, because they're going to go home, they're going to practice these things. I teach them how to recognize what those feelings are, and then how to deal with the feelings in other people around them, because many of the children that are just so intelligent, and like you said, we use the same term, spidey senses. My kids came up with that, and they're like, my spidey senses are telling me. And I just thought, oh my goodness, that's such a perfect way to describe it. So I think that's funny that you use the same term. But people, the kids know about Spider-Man, and so
Exactly.
they recognize that, and that's
Yeah.
a way to help them pay attention. One of the other things that I remember I felt very strongly about was helping my child know that they were right when they identified their spidey sense. For example, one time, this was one of the earliest times. My first daughter, she was about 2, not quite 2, and we were at the grocery store, and she walked up to this woman and she said, "Are you mad?" And the woman looked at her, and she was just like, she didn't know my child. She didn't know anything. And she said, "No." And just, kind of brushed her off like that. Well,
Mm.
so when we got home and I talked to my daughter, I said, "Tell me what was going on with you." And I said, "What did you notice about that
Yeah.
woman?" And she said, "Her eyebrows looked like this." And
Yeah.
she did the little eyebrow, from the face. And
Yeah.
she said she looked like she was mad. And I said, "You were so in tune to notice that." And I
Mhm.
told her what a good noticer she was. And then when she would notice it on, me and my husband, and she would say,
Mhm.
"Mom, are you feeling this way or that way?" And I remember that was when people were telling me, "You shouldn't tell your child how you're feeling." And I was like, "No, I want her to trust her instincts. I want her to trust her intuition and trust those spidey senses, and know that when she feels that feeling, that she's right." And so I would tell her, "Yes, I am feeling, unhappy about I'm feeling unhappy about something." I didn't, it was age appropriate,
Right.
what I would share with her. But I let her know that she was right at detecting that there was something that was uncomfortable that I was going through. And all my kids are so in tune with things like that. And what was interesting was my husband was not raised like that at all. But he learned so many emotional intelligence skills
Mhm.
from the things that, my kids were learning. And so we all benefit from these skills. And then we benefit in our relationships inside the home and outside the home.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely love that. This is awesome. We could talk forever. Unfortunately, we are on this place. Well, not unfortunately, because fortunately we met here, right? We're at Potapalooza, which means our segments are a little bit shorter and a little bit more concise. But Karen, you have been a wealth of information. Thank you so very much. I hope all of our parents and listeners take these little gold nuggets that we've been talking about that you've shared with us, put them in their pocket, and take them out and use them with their own families, right? We want happy, healthy, and successful kids, happy, healthy, successful families. So would you please make sure that you say out loud how parents can get a hold of you? And then also everything will be down in the show notes after we connect.
Yes. So the best way to get a hold of me is with my email. And I'm also on Facebook, Karen Olson Hall. I'm also on Instagram, The Hero Within Podcast. And my email is KarenHallCoaching@gmail.com. And Christina, thank you for what you're doing to bring education home, because so many of these skills aren't taught in school. And
Right.
so to have these skills, these are life skills that we need, gives
Absolutely.
families the empathy advantage, because when we have these skills, we are more successful, and then we help our children be more successful. And so thank you for having me as a guest. I really enjoyed being with you today.
You are very welcome. And I'm so glad that we met. We will definitely have to collaborate, work some more. But parents and audience and guests, please make sure that you follow up with Karen, find out more about this topic, really tune into your children's intuition and their feelings, and really have those awesome conversations that help benefit everyone. Until next time, we will say goodbye. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. And together we bring you experts